Here is something nobody tells a man when he turns
The
60.
secret.
The body
Not
you
the
see in the
end.
mirror is not the finished version
I
of
won't.
you. You may simply be the neglected version. And when a man at 65 decides to stop accepting decline and rebuild his
The biceps
strength,
rope-like fibers give it
something
incredible
remarkable
strength.
happens. He doesn't just gain muscle or look better. His biology changes. His confidence shifts. People respond
Good day,
to him
gentlemen.
differently.
And to you,
he
sir.
begins to see himself
fine day.
differently. This isn't motivation. It's a scientifically grounded look at what happens when a man over 60 builds the strongest version of himself. In this video, you're going to discover 4 things. First, why everything you have been told about aging and muscle loss is either incomplete, outdated, or quietly wrong. And why that misinformation has been costing you years. Second, why the way most men over 60 train, eat, and think about recovery is almost perfectly designed to guarantee failure. Not because they are lazy, but because they are following advice built for 30-year-olds. Third, what actually happens inside a man's body, his brain, his body at work, and his daily life when he commits to real structured physical transformation after 65. The results are not what you expect. Fourth, the one identity shift that separates the men who transform from the men who try for 3 weeks and quietly quit. This is not about willpower. It is about something much more fundamental. And then, at the very end, there is one more insight, an unexpected one, something that reframes this entire conversation in a way that will stay with you long after this video ends. Let us begin. One of the most common things a man over 60 hears is this: you're going to lose muscle as you age. That is just what happens. There is some truth to it. Testosterone, growth hormone, and other muscle-building hormones decline with age. Recovery becomes slower. Building muscle becomes harder, and body fat can become more stubborn. But harder does not mean impossible. A 65-year-old body still has the biological mechanisms required to build muscle, burn fat, strengthen bones, and improve cardiovascular health. What changes is not what your body can achieve, but how intelligently you must approach it. Harvard Medical School recommends progressive resistance training for building muscle regardless of age. Gradually increasing weight, repetitions, or sets continues to stimulate muscle growth even later in life. And this matters because sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle and strength, affects far more than appearance. Left unchallenged, it can eventually affect basic independence, carrying groceries, climbing stairs, rising from a chair, and moving confidently. Research has also linked low muscle mass in adults over 65 with a greater risk of death. This is not simply about looking younger. Muscle is part of your protection against physical decline. And once you understand that, the next question becomes obvious. Why do so many older men train hard and still see almost no results? Imagine a 63-year-old man decides to transform himself. He finds a popular workout program and starts training 4 or 5 days every week. He pushes hard, stays sore, and rarely misses a workout. 3 months later, almost nothing has changed. He concludes, "My body cannot do this anymore." But his body may not be the problem. His program is. Many routines are designed around younger people who tolerate higher training volumes and recover faster. After 60, the muscle-building signal still works, but recovery generally requires more attention. Train too frequently without enough recovery, and you can spend more time breaking tissue down than allowing it to rebuild. Research examining resistance training and longevity found strong benefits at moderate amounts of weekly training, with the greatest longevity association around 90 to 119 minutes per week, and no additional mortality benefit beyond roughly 120 minutes. More is not automatically better. For many older men, 2 or 3 focused resistance training sessions built around progressive overload and adequate recovery can be far more sustainable than exhausting daily workouts. Cardiovascular exercise still matters. The ideal approach combines strength training with aerobic activity, but if maintaining muscle and independence is the goal, resistance training becomes essential. Then comes nutrition. Older adults generally need around 1.0 to 1.2 g of protein per kilogram of body weight daily, while higher intakes, sometimes around 1.6 g per kilogram, may help maximize muscle development in appropriate individuals. For a 200 lb man, that can mean roughly 90 to 145 g per day. Protein distribution matters too. Meals containing approximately 25 to 30 grams of quality protein can help support muscle protein synthesis throughout the day. Training provides the signal. Nutrition and recovery give your body the materials and time to respond. To a man who does this, building muscle after 60 is often treated as a cosmetic project. The deeper benefits happen beneath the surface. Research involving adults 60 and older has found resistance training can reduce blood pressure. Other studies associate strength training with improvements in metabolic health, bone strength, fall prevention, and cognitive health. The longevity data is equally striking. Research has found adults 65 and older who perform strength training at least twice weekly had substantially lower mortality than those who did not, with one study reporting a 46% lower mortality rate. Muscle, then, represents much more than appearance. It supports protection, mobility, and independence. Strength training can also improve everyday quality of life, including mobility, pain, normal daily activities, and psychological well-being. Think about what that means practically. Being strong enough to climb stairs without hesitation, carry your own groceries, get out of a chair easily, maintain balance, travel, move through the world without constantly wondering whether your body can handle what comes next. Organizations, including the World Health Organization and National Institute on Aging, emphasize muscle strengthening activity as an important part of healthy aging. 2 men can enter their 60s with similar limitations and move toward completely different futures. One gradually accepts weakness as inevitable, the other trains intelligently, eats appropriately, recovers properly, and continues challenging his body. Years later, the difference can become enormous. And that brings us to the part of this transformation that has almost nothing to do with muscle. Here is where almost everyone gets this wrong. When men approach physical transformation after 60, they treat it as a project, a temporary effort with a defined start and a hoped-for finish line. They're going to get back in shape. They're going to lose some weight. They're going to try this for a few months. And projects end. The men who build and sustain extraordinary physiques in their 60s and 70s do not do it because they have more discipline than other men. They do not do it because they found a perfect program or a miracle supplement. They do it because somewhere in the process, something shifts. They stop being someone who exercises and become someone who is an athlete at 65. That identity change, or that quiet internal reclassification of who they are, is what makes the behavior permanent. It is not willpower holding the habit in place. It is identity. You do not have to wrestle a person into doing things consistent with who they believe themselves to be. Think about the man who has smoked for decades but finally quits. The ones who succeed long-term are almost never the ones who say, "I'm trying to quit smoking." They're the ones who say, "I am not a smoker." The behavior follows the identity. The same principle governs physical transformation. A man who identifies as someone who lifts, who moves, who eats to perform, who takes his recovery seriously, that man does not have to debate whether to go to the gym on a cold Tuesday morning. He goes, because that is what he does. because that is who he is. Lifting weights is the first-line defense against sarcopenia. Even if you are getting into strength training to build muscle, look better, and gain strength, you're also laying the groundwork for decades of healthy activity rather than inactivity and decline. That groundwork is not just physical, it is psychological, it is identity level, and the man who installs that identity in his 60s will carry it through his 70s and beyond. Resistance training may help people live longer. In research involving over 4,500 people, aged 50 and older, stronger study participants were less likely to die over the 4-year study than those with low muscle strength. This benefit is likely a combination of multiple physiological improvements. Plus, when you're stronger, you're more likely to remain active and independent as you age, which also can improve overall health. Active and independent, not managed and dependent. The identity of the strong man over 60 is not nostalgic. It is not a desperate attempt to reclaim youth. It is a conscious, forward-facing decision about what kind of man he wants to be for the next 20 or 30 years of his life. That is the transformation nobody sees in the before and after photos. But it is the one that matters most. Everything discussed in this video has been about muscle, about strength, about physique, about identity. But there is one dimension of this transformation that almost no one talks about when they address men over 60. And it may be more urgent than all of it. Bone. Most men think osteoporosis is a women's disease. Most men have never had a bone density scan. Most men have given exactly zero thought to the structural architecture holding their entire body upright and functional. Here's the science. Bone density, like muscle mass, declines with age. And like muscle mass, it does not decline at an equal rate in men who train and men who do not. Progressive resistance training, the same kind of training that builds muscle, directly stimulates bone remodeling. The mechanical stress placed on bone during weight-bearing exercise triggers the bone to deposit new mineral, to thicken, to strengthen. The body builds bone where it feels force. When you remove force, when you sit, when you stay sedentary, the body removes bone slowly, quietly, without a single symptom until the day something breaks. Studies show resistance training lowers the risk of osteoporosis specifically, not just slows it, lowers the risk. A man at 65 who breaks a hip has an extraordinarily steep mortality curve in the years that follow. This is documented, sobering, and largely preventable. The skeleton you build in your 60s is the skeleton that decides whether you stay on your feet in your 80s. Most conversations about building the best physique of your life focus entirely on aesthetics and strength. That is fine. Those things matter. But the man who truly understands what is at stake understands that this is also a structural engineering project. He is not just building a body that looks better. He is building a body that will not collapse beneath him. The bone truth is the reason this is not optional. The reason this is not vanity. The reason this is not something to revisit when the timing is better. Your skeleton does not wait for better timing. Let us bring this together. You came into this video as a man who was perhaps uncertain, perhaps skeptical, perhaps carrying the quiet belief installed by culture, by the fitness industry, by offhand comments from people who should know better, that the best version of your body was somewhere in the rearview mirror. Here is what the science actually says. It is not inevitable. The decline, the softness, the diminishment. None of it is written in stone. The best means to build muscle mass, no matter your age, is progressive resistance training. The mechanisms are intact. The biology is willing. What has been missing for most men in this situation is not capability. It has been correct information and a strategy built for who they actually are right now. What you learn today, the biology of muscle loss, is real, but it is not a sentence. It is a condition with a proven response. The training and nutrition mistakes most men over 60 make are not the result of weakness. They are the result of following advice designed for younger bodies. The physical transformation that follows real commitment at 65 reaches far beyond the mirror. It touches the brain, the heart, the bones, the blood work, and the daily experience of being alive. The identity shift from someone who exercises to someone who is an athlete at any age is the difference between a temporary project and a permanent transformation. And the bone truth, the thing nobody tells you, the skeleton is a living structure. It builds where force is applied, and it erodes where force is absent. The man who lifts is building the architecture that keeps him upright and independent for decades. The man who waits is allowing that architecture to quietly weaken beneath him. You're not too old for this. You are old enough to understand exactly why it matters. The men who watch this video and actually act on it are not a majority. Most men will nod, feel something, close the screen, and return to the same patterns. That is not judgment. That is just the reality of how most people process information. But some men are different. Some men hear something like this and feel it land differently. Not as motivation, but as recognition. As the quiet, certain feeling that this is the moment the trajectory changes. In the next video, we answer a question that almost every man over 60 has, but almost nobody asks directly. What does your morning routine have to do with your testosterone, your muscle-building capacity, and your body composition? The answer is going to rearrange how you think about the first 2 hours of your day. You do not want to miss it. If this story has changed the way you look at the strength of your own body, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the biological truths that society often tries to ignore. Build your strongest future. The next chapter of your transformation will open soon.